Okay, so it's a really interesting thing to note straight away for Will as a climber is the real strength he has on undercut moves.
Hmm.
He's really, really good on those. So that undercut move at the start, I know from talking to Will, he was relatively strong compared to a lot of other pro climbers. So it makes it almost look like it's easy for him, but it isn't an easy move at all. Lots of people struggle with it. And the other thing was straight after that undercut move, you see he goes to a slot, and
Hmm.
that works really well in that half crimp position where you're not wrapping the fingers right over, because those slots don't work as well in that position because the top, the wrap on your fingers gets in the way and you can't full wrap on a hold. So this is another thing which is really good for Will, is that he can move between full crimp with a thumb wrap, but also a very open half crimp position, which is great for slots. And is one of the reasons why I always argue for any elite level athlete is they want to be equally strong in almost all grip positions, because ultimately you will be faced with holds which work best in a certain grip position. And Will's really good at that. And I don't think people always notice that as much.
Generally speaking, is a full crimp going to be a stronger position than a half crimp or a drag for a lot of the climbers that you're working with?
No, not necessarily. It all
Oh,
comes down to anatomy, training history, injury history. It's very varied actually.
got it, got it. Well, one of the other things I noticed here was kind of how wild the movement was at the start here. He's towing into things almost, kind of above his head and below his head at the same time. The body positioning is really interesting and exciting to watch at the start of this climb. Obviously, quite specific. Is that something that you all worked on? Obviously, quite famously, there is a lot of replica training with Burden of Dreams. But what about for those opening moves here on Alphane?
So in terms of the body positioning and things like that and the towing in, what you'll find with that is that because Will understands I suppose, the demands of the shape and the way of the holds, he has an appreciation on this stuff that is really key to maintain body tension between fingers and toes all the way through. Because what you'll find is that on certain style holds where they're not more in cut and more positive, is you cannot afford to lose any body tension on that stuff. So any kind of cut loose and the hips coming out, you just, no matter how strong your fingers are, you can't maintain contact with the rock. And I think this climb in particular is really interesting because if you look at Sean Rabbitou's climber, who is again a climber who's incredible with body tension, is
Mhm.
he performs very well on this climb. And I think a lot of people, when they first started projecting this alongside when Sean was working it, learned a lot. And I remember Will saying to me, it's fascinating watching Sean climb on this project because objectively, he's not anywhere near as strong as Will, but his movement skills are incredible, as are his body tension, sort of between feet and hands.
Yeah, I love the demands of that it requires so much beyond just sheer finger strength.
Mm.
Well, let's keep watching here, and I'll have you chime in on what you find most interesting. Is this the crux here that he's working through?
No, the Crux is the first boulder that comes up into this traversing section out. So really now for Will coming into the sort of exit outro of the problem, this much more plays to Will's strengths as a route climber. And this is where the interesting payoff comes for boulderers who have also done a load of route climbing, because they get into a better position because they have the fitness and the recovery on these intermediate holes. I think I remember that Aiden, when he was trying this, couldn't have anywhere near as much rest as Will does in this section because he's just simply not as fit a climber.
Right. So he's recovering there and now about to punch into the business.
Yeah, and you'll find with these kind of sections, with these outros where the climbing is not anywhere near as hard as other bits, is the climbers will really work on ways to get extra amounts of kind of rest from the route. So they'll try and use heel toes, they'll try and jam their fingers in a little bit more. They'll just essentially take a sort of extra effort to make really, really efficient climbing, because this is energy conservation when they're a little bit fatigued versus when you start initially on a climb, you're just working speed and power so you can get through the thing.
Well, super impressive. It looked like he just had it incredibly dialed. Let's now contrast that with Burden of Dreams. All right, y'all, just a quick minute here to talk about every climber's favorite topic, finger strength, and how we can build it. And I'm telling you guys, this has changed the game for me. Check out the Force board. I've been using it for a while now, and I am already seeing the difference in my finger endurance and finger strength. And that's because it's allowing me to precisely dial in what I need in any given workout. I mean, it's tiny, so I can throw it in my bag and take it to the crag for my warm up or to the gym or when I'm traveling. It logs everything in the app automatically. I can even see how I stack up against the community with regard to my finger strength. It's gamifying the way I'm training. Dr. Tyler Nelson's been on the show to talk about how effective this kind of training is, and I am loving it. If you're a geek about training your fingers like I am, you got to check out the Force board. It's cheaper than a pair of climbing shoes, and it's going to level up how you train your fingers. Also, if you use that link below and use code STRUGGLE at checkout, you get 10% off, and the show gets a little bit of love. So get out there, get those strong fingies, and start sending. Burden of Dreams, which is considered to be, at least in this current moment, the hardest boulder problem in the world. But check out these feet.
Yeah, the footholds are really shocking, and I know that Will went through quite a few pairs of shoes, making sure that when he was projecting this, that he had just the right amount of worn inness and just the right amount of edges on the shoes when he was trying it, because it made that much of a difference, even though it's like a board climb.
Yeah, the angle is similar to a board climb. Obviously, Will's very good at that. But the just the size of the holes are so tiny. He called that first foot the good foot, and it literally looks like there's just nothing at all. He's like, this is the good foot, and so that this again speaks to the tension that you have to hold. But this isn't a route that you can climb particularly fast, or am I wrong in that assessment? Just it just seems like the tension is so requires so much, and the accuracy it requires so much. Was speed a benefit for Will on this one?
I would say that this one is about maybe accuracy and precision is the key on this, because the footholds require a very precise use of them, just the angle, the amount of pressure, and the same again for the hands. Um, and where it becomes difficult on this particular project is the distance between those footholds and those handholds. Like if you go and look at the replica, which is just like one room over from where I'm sat right now, and look at them on the wall and sort of start to span your hands and imagine that you were climbing, and you immediately go, these are a really long way apart. Even if I put fairly good holds on the wall at those distances, you would go, oh, well, someone set a really reachy problem here. It's very much like that. And you go, whoa, the foothold's all the way over there. That's hard to get to and requires a lot of tension. So, yeah, the key here is to be able to execute very accurately all the way through those moves and not lose tension, not make a small mistake, not catch a hold just wrong so that then you can't come and match on it or move off it again.
What was the biggest challenge for Will in these, what is it, 6 moves?
Yeah, it's not very many moves. The big thing that we talked about a lot was skin quality and making sure his skin was good enough for enough goes
Mm-hmm.
in the right conditions and being familiar enough with the moves. And I know there were some small tweaks that he made in terms of how he moved his feet around. So there was almost like a foot sequence on the project as well that he could change around on. One of the things I do think is interesting to observe in how Will places his feet on this hole on this problem is that you'll notice that he doesn't always toe in on a foothold. He sometimes flat pushes, so you'll see him hit a foothold and then drop his heel a little bit lower, almost like he's standing on a slab. So I think it's this move. Where is it? Here. You see
Oh yeah.
there, he drops his heel quite a bit lower, so almost get more power out of it to pushing it rather than toeing in. And I think that's really particular to his skill set, to understanding that some things are flat pushers, others are toeing in, and good board climbers understand the difference between those two styles of move, even though it's just a 40-degree board.
Now we're talking about big moves. This is the biggest move here, right? And
Yeah.
it's huge. And what he's going to is not great. It looked like he caught it with maybe 2 or 3 fingers on a drag at the top there. Is that something that you all worked on? Just that kind of huck to that. I'm not going to call it a finishing. It's not a finishing jug. It's just a another junky hold, right?
Yeah, it's a big flat hold that looks really good, but isn't that easy to hold once your body is coming out from the wall and you're covering that amount of distance and you're a little bit we're not really fatigued. You just have lost over that previous 15 seconds your very, very top end power. So it's a move that, you know, we trained on the replica quite a lot. We have that move down here on the replica down at Lattice. And the hold, it was really important for that to be poor on the replica and represent that move. So the one that we have here is the exact replica of that hold as well, rather than just going, oh, we'll just jump to a rail, that'll probably work. No,
Hmm.
that exact hold was scanned as well. And you will find with those style of really long moves that it's a coordination element, and it's whether you have the perfect coordination when you're tired as well. Because as soon as you don't have perfect coordination, you have to have so much of a higher level of contact strength than's truly required in a way, or you have to have extra good conditions so that when you hit it just wrong and you started to slip a little bit, you can still hold it. Whereas if you execute perfectly, these moves tend to feel quite straightforward, and that's the key to all this stuff. It's just perfect execution all the way through, and it's hard to do over 6 moves in a row.